We're going to talk about course management / shot selection, and the reason is because I want to give a context for anything and everything to do with picking clubs and picking shots and what to avoid when you're trying to play. If you don't have a context for this, it starts to become very abstract. One of the things I think is a big problem with learning to play golf is it's a little bit too abstract, and the problem is there's too much of a difference between really not knowing what you're doing at all on a golf course and playing on a real course, especially a hard course. So I wanted to start with La Purinsima because it is a slope 143 course. It's one of the hardest courses you'll probably ever see in your life, and I figured I could start with that, and that every other course would be easier in terms of the layout and shot selection and making shots. So let's look at the first hole. First hole on La Purinsima is a 550-yard dogleg left uphill par 5. It's a pretty tough hole to start with, but not too tough if you break it down. So let me break it down for you. So first you see this chute of grass here in the middle, which we call the fairway, and I will mark off the hazards here, and then we'll talk about some of the issues involved with picking a tee to play from. So the first thing is just looking at the hazards here. I've circled off some blue areas on the right of the fairway, right corner of the turn, and that is a lake back there. You can barely see from the tee box, but you can see the reeds sticking out of the water. And if you look at the course map, you can see there's a lake there. The yellow is waist, short waist on the right here, and long waist on the back behind the trees to the left. They're both behind the trees, but still you can see at least the waist to the bottom of the trees on the right. You can't see it behind the trees on the left, but it's there. And then the trees themselves I marked off with brown. Those are obviously you do not want to hit into the trees off the tee. However, you can still play over the trees or through the chute in the middle. And I wanted to talk now about selecting the tee boxes. Now obviously there are trade-offs in playing from the back tees versus the forward tees. On this hole, it's unusual. You know it's a par 5. You know it's going to be moderately long from the back tees, 545. You might save 75 yards if you play from the whites up front. But you can see the shot window is really the same from both sets of tees. Yes, you have a big hole in the front here if you play from the whites, but you still have low trees on the sides. You play from the back, you get a much smaller window in the direct line of the fairway, but you can it's much easier to play over the trees. So if we look at the target here, which includes a little bit of rough on the right and left sides of the fairway, but this is a reasonably decent target distance of about 200 yards out here to the center of this yellow dot. So that is what we're gonna try to hit into with 150-yard iron off of the front white tees, or 200-yard shot off the back tees. You should be able to get in here somewhere in this yellow dot fairly easily. That's short and left of the lake. It is left of the right-hand side waist, and it is right of the left-hand side waist. But it is a reasonable distance off. I would say that's a reasonable landing area for the shot. So what do we shoot here? Well, we really have 4 possible areas that we can go into. We can go high over the trees to the left, we can go high over the gap in the center, and we can go high over the gap to the right. Or we can go low through the gap with sort of a line drive shot directly through the center to the target area. Now the shot high over the left side is what we would call a high cut shot. And the idea is to hit up over the trees and then have the ball come back to the right and land in that lower yellow target area. And how you hit cut shots I'll get into later, but for now let's just say the ball comes off the tee, goes left high, comes back, drops down right into that yellow target area at the bottom. The other shot we would call a draw shot. That would come up high over the trees to the right, come back to the left with a draw, and land in this yellow area here in the middle. And then you have a straight shot, and your straight shot can either go high or low. Your straight shot high would go up into the yellow area in the center and drop down to the yellow target area on the fairway. Or you can hit a low shot, very line drive shot, and run that out to the yellow area in the center. Now, keep in mind the cut shot is going to go left and then come back to the right. The draw will go right and then come back to the left. And the straight shot basically goes either high straight or low straight. Okay, so for now, let's look at one other factor we need to look at, which is very important, which is the wind. So the wind in this case, when I played the course the last time, the wind was blowing about 20 miles out, gusting from left to right in the direction of the area here. And what that tends to do is push all the shots right. So you have to compensate by hitting left into the wind a little bit. If it comes towards you, it tends to reduce the distance of the shot, and it also amplifies any spin that you put on the ball to hit a cut or draw shot. And that means that the target area will move back towards the tee box. And if the wind is blowing from behind you, the target area tends to move out towards the water. So you have to be careful to adjust your club selection and your shot selection depending on the wind. And in this case, because the wind is so strong, we're not going to take any chances with either a straight shot or a draw shot up high and right coming back left, because in both cases the wind is likely to make the shot blow off at least into the waist on the right in the yellow area, possibly into the lake behind the yellow circle there, and very possibly it will blow us into the trees off the tee. So we rule out everything left of the target right of the target circle, sorry, and we're going to play the higher cut shot on the left side. All we want to do at this point is get it over the trees, and again, that is much easier to do from the back tees than it is from the front tees, but still possible to do from the front tees. You still can pick medium-sized iron or a high drive and go over those trees, and the back tees, which would be behind to the left off the screen, those would be a moderately high shot, easy to do off the back tees. So let's just talk about that right there. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and put in where my shot landed, standing right behind it, and also the view looking to the green, which is in the slot up ahead. And now the next question is, where are we going to go next? So the first thing I'll do is I'll draw my red box, and then I'll put some targets in. So we have a left-hand target that's short, and it's going to be just in front of the tree, but to the left over there, but right of the waist. And then we have another target which is long behind the tree on the right, taking the lake out of play. So what happens basically after you pick your target zone? I always try to pick a red zone, essentially, which is a boundary for like a rectangular box where I'm going to play my shot into it. In this case, the first question you have to ask is, can you pass the tree on the right? If you can, then you can stretch your box out past the tree. If you can't, then you need to put your box in front of the tree. And the point of the question is, the box is the limit of your ability to reasonably accurately hit the ball within the box. You think like a shoe box. So that red square represents the far end of my shoebox that I'm going to play into. If you put it out too far, then you have to broaden the box, because the farther you hit the ball, the more space you will need to land it in. The box tends to grow in size with a longer shot. And obviously the sides of the box are defined by the hazards on the sides. So you got trees on the left, trees on the right, you put the box in between those two trees. The question then becomes, how far can you hit and land inside that box, and with reasonable accuracy, especially when you consider that on the one side in this case there's a lake, and on the other side there's waste. So I would skew my front landing zone to the left, because I'd rather take on the waste than take on the lake. If I go into the lake, that's a lost ball in 2 strokes. If I go into the waste, the worst is a lost ball in 2 strokes, but only if I can't find. So I think if I go into waste, it's not too thick, I have a good chance of finding it. So I'll take a little skew to the left, especially considering that the rough on that side of the fairway is not going to be as matted down as the rough on the right side, which is next to the cart path. And the rough on the right side offers little to no resistance to a ball. Sits over there and will happily bounce off that hard pack rough and go into the lake. So the question then is, if you hit back and you go behind the tree and you try to take the lake out of play by going past it, and you get the ideal setup, the ideal location on the straight line to the green, which is up to the left. The problem then becomes that you have now hit a longer shot, and obviously your box needs to be bigger. And while there is more room on the right behind the lake, there's also more woods on the right past that. There's also a good chance that you can spray the ball into the lake, inadvertently cutting it. There's a chance that you can pull it left, try to hit it long. Again, the longer you try to hit the ball, the bigger you need to make your box to account for the possibility of the ball going there. And the more that the boundaries on the side become a factor. And so of how well you can play, how consistently you can play, and stay out of trouble. And if you can hit straight all the time, that's fine. Some of us can't. Some of us never will. I like to say that the odds that you're going to hit the ball straight are, maybe 1 in 45, depending on what your cone of dispersion is. It's pretty straightforward. I would pick maybe a 30-degree cone of dispersion. I will put the corners of my box on that cone at the hazards that intersect that cone. And I want to stay inside that. I don't want to play it to the very limit. I'll be lucky just to put it inside that cone. I'll be happy there. If it's in play in the rough or in the fairway, you want to take sort of an intermediate risk. You could try to play a cut shot and put both of those target areas into play. So long as you land back on the fairway, you're at the first one. And if you actually make it over to the center of the fairway, you're on the second one. But then again, it's not easy to do that out of the rough. But in this case, I would definitely recommend taking that left-hand shot, then chipping another 75 yards, or maybe something over that tree onto the green, not go under it. I think the first time I played this, I hit a 4-iron up to that green from there. And that hole I thought it was a par 4 the first 2 times I played it. I didn't know it was a par 5 until I looked at the yardage marker on the tee box. I actually checked it out. I think it's 535, 545 from that back tee on the first hole. And I knew it was long and it was tight, but I didn't think it was par 5. I thought it was a 4. And it actually is not a bad 4. Once you get around that corner, you basically have about 100 up to the green. And as long as you don't hit on the right side of the green, not a big deal. The rough there isn't really that long. It's flat all the way around from the top of the green to the bottom. And the only trick from there is basically getting on the green and putting downhill into the pin if it's on the lower half.